Hello guys, I am the Ben 10 card maker, and today I am kind of nervous to react to this Ben 10 video. It's called "Is Ben 10 as Great as I Remember Part 1" by Low Arts. Please do a sub to him. Now, let's begin.
I remember Ben
I'm
10 from
not.
when I was a kid. It was one of those shows where I never managed to catch every episode, but whenever I saw one that was on, well, it was Ben 10 time baby. At this
Wait, do I have. Okay, I got my audio on. Alright, we're good.
point, though, it's a classic animated series. Well, at least the original is. Still, I only have vague memories of my time
What?
with it. So
Alien
I figured,
Force?
hey, why not watch the
Alien
whole thing now?
And
But there's a question
Omniverse
I need to answer.
Classics.
Is this show really that great? Has it held up to the test of time? So I'm going to go through every episode in the original series, discussing what I like and what I don't like in the hopes of answering that question. So it's time for some Ben 10. But first, it's time for this video's sponsor, Bespoke Post. Bespoke Post is a subscription box service that allows you to try out cool new products each month. They've got clothes, kitchen appliances, drinks, outdoor gear, and you get the picture. And using their preference quiz, it's super easy to figure out which items are right for you. Now, Bespoke Post sent me 3 boxes. Split, a hatchet that's really going to come in handy once I got my fire pit going, Weekender, a carry-all that'll fit all the necessities when I go traveling, and Concentrate, which includes an iced coffee maker, a bitter, and a desk set so I can finally clean up all my crap. Each of these boxes has around $70 in retail value, but with a Bespoke Post subscription, they only cost $49. And here's the great thing. You can preview each box to see what you'll receive. If you don't like it, you can swap it out for a different box or even skip the month for no charge. So if this sounds interesting to you, click the links in the description or use my code LOWART20 to get 20% off your first box. Thanks to them for supporting the channel, thank you to all of you for watching, and I hope you enjoy this Ben 10 retrospective.
I am scared.
Right away, Ben 10 establishes many of its key components. We get a peek at the overarching conflict with Vilgax, we learn about the narrative structure of a road trip with Grandpa and Gwen, about these characters' personalities and the basics of their relationships, and of course, about the Omnitrix itself, which for most would probably be the show's biggest selling point. I mean, it's hard to overstate how brilliant this concept is. How couldn't a kid find the idea
I still pretend I have the Omnitrix.
to fight bad
Dream
guys
about it.
somewhat cool? It's natural to choose your own favorite. Think about how awesome it would be to use this device for yourself, and well, you get the picture. Plus, since the watch has a timer and sometimes doesn't do what Ben wants, that injects some clear conflict into the show. Will Ben be able to improve with it? Will the finicky watch fail him at a crucial time? Basically, there are just a lot of obstacles related to this watch that Ben will need to overcome. Anyway, out of all the things we learn though, Ben's personality is probably the most important for the show's wider story. After all, this is the guy we're going to be stuck with for every episode, so we need to know what kind of person he is
and
and why we
Max
should
are
root
the
for him.
best
And this episode does a fine job of
One,
showing us just that, because Ben, despite
she's
being
alright.
a little bit of a brat, seems to have a good heart and want to do the right thing. Of course, he has a problem though.
It's
He's too
Egghead.
weak. So if he wants to help others, he'll need to become stronger. And as we see when he goes back to hang up these bullies at the end of the episode, he now has the strength to do just that. However, at the same time, he's using this awesome power for something relatively minor, to basically
Watch
get
is
petty
green.
revenge.
See that,
So there are some
guys?
questions.
Pretty cool, huh?
Will he learn how to properly use this power for good? Will he use it for himself? Will he be careless? Or will he become better because...
You know what? Ben never. Bro, my boy doesn't even know how to look at his own Omnitrix. In Omniverse, there's a scene, right? There's a scene. Hopefully, I can look for it for you guys. There's a scene in Omniverse where Ben says, "Big chill" because he wants to go through a wall, but the die was on heat blast. So
of this
bad.
power. Of course, then there's Ben's relationship with Grandpa and Gwen. As far as Grandpa's concerned, it's simple. Ben likes him a lot, but we don't get too much beyond that for them. Though we do get the first of the series' sketchy Grandpa moments where he clearly knows too much about aliens. Of course, that means there's some plot-related stuff going on with Grandpa. Gwen gets a bit more here though, as this uptight counter to Ben's more lax personality. Needless to say, they argue a lot, so they'll need to grow and learn to respect one another more as the series progresses. Honestly though, even at this early point, their bickering is one of my least favorite elements of the show. It's extremely repetitive and lacking in humor. My main hope is that they will either develop out of this fast, or that the show finds a more clever way to go about this. But I do appreciate this one thing about Gwen.
Oh no, it doesn't.
It
doesn't get fixed until Alien Force. And then season 3 of Alien Force comes out. It's not that bad actually.
Helps where she can. It makes her far more likable and engaging than she would otherwise be, because this way, she doesn't just feel like an accessory to Ben. Instead, she's her own character who I want to learn more about. Finally, the alien fights themselves. These are a lot of fun. Seeing what each of these different powers can do, how Ben uses them. Again, it's just a great way of hooking the audience. Because each of these aliens' unique abilities are easy to understand, but also significantly different from one another. It helps that each of these transformation sequences are great. They look painful, like he's genuinely morphing into a totally different being. It's obvious that they put a lot of effort into these. All this is to say that none of the fights here felt repetitive or dull. I was too busy learning about each of these aliens for that to be the case. In the end, this is simply a really solid start to Ben 10, and I hope it'll be able to keep up this level of quality in the next episode. Episode 2 begins by establishing its main conflict for Ben. After all, even though he saves all these people from this fire, once he turns back into human, he doesn't get respect from the authorities, and no one even knows all the good he's done outside of Gwen and Grandpa. Needless to say, this is an easy conflict to get behind. I mean, how couldn't this be at least a bit frustrating? Unfortunately though, I can't say I'm a fan of how the episode handles the conflict from there. See, we're introduced to Dr. Animo, a scientist who's living in squalor. Eventually, we learn that he was doing super sketchy experiments on animals and failed to win an award he really wanted. From here, characters like Gwen, and eventually Ben himself, draw direct comparisons between Animo and Ben, as though they're similar because they want recognition. But this dynamic falls apart pretty quickly because they aren't all that similar. From the get-go, Dr. Animo's research was messed up, but Ben is doing good things. So yeah, they both want recognition, but it comes from such a different place that it never felt like there was really much for Ben to actually learn from Animo. To me, this conflict would have worked much better if we knew that Animo's research had been for the greater good, and that he only fell off the deep end when he didn't receive his award. That would have made him a far more compelling villain, but it also would have done a better job of reflecting Ben's struggles. Beyond that, the episode attempts to highlight Ben's choice between rescuing people and being rewarded for his actions with the sumo slammer card he wants. Throughout the episode, he steals in an attempt to get it, he tries to ask for it as a reward after he saves a grocery store, and he eventually has to choose between the card and saving a man's life. And I didn't buy into this conflict, because when you're saying save someone's life or get a collectible card, the answer is so abundantly clear. Ben doesn't become a better person to me because he makes the right choice here, he simply maintains a baseline level of basic decency. I think this moment would have been stronger if maybe this person he was rescuing now was someone who had previously disrespected him. That way, Ben would be making the choice to rescue people, regardless of them ever having a good opinion of him, regardless of recognition. And as far as I can tell, that's the point of this conflict. Maybe I'd be a bit more forgiving of this somewhat weak moral lesson if I liked other elements of the episode, but I didn't. Ben and Gwen's bickering still isn't any better, and beyond that, some of the fight scenes are significantly hampered by Gwen's screaming. I know that sounds like a small complaint, but man, oh man did it distract me. Again, then there's Animo, who's an incredibly bland villain and outside of a couple cool cuts, there wasn't much to keep my interest. Really, the only thing this episode truly had going for it was that I got to see some new aliens. Unfortunately, I feel pretty similarly about episode 3 as well.
Episode
Here, Ben starts
2,
off
3,
by
and
fighting
4
Gwen, and then no one believes him when he actually sees a monster in the water. So it seems like we're getting a typical boy who
2,
cried
3, and
wolf
4 is
lesson.
basically
However, after he meets the sailor who wants
learning
to
about
catch
the
the
new
Graphic,
aliens,
the
their
lesson
abilities
moves
and
in a bit of a
stuff,
different
so
direction.
it's not really
After all, then Ben ends up
anything to the
protecting
story
Kraken
until we get to
culture and
episode
realizing that
5.
it isn't inherently violent.
So
To me, that lesson is more along the lines of, don't fear something just because you don't understand it, which is a fine enough lesson. Regardless of that though, I really don't care much about the lesson. A good TV show doesn't need some moral message to entertain me. But again, there isn't much else here that I find all that enjoyable. First, the Friends of Fish are basic villains with equally basic motivations. Personally, I think I would have found this conflict far more interesting if we had spent more time focused on them. Maybe it could have been that they truly believe that they're doing the right thing, that the Kraken is insanely dangerous, something like that, which would hone in on this concept of fearing things you don't understand. Second, there's Gwen, who at this point has been reduced to little more than an exposition dumper and a damsel in distress. So I'm hoping that'll change real soon. My biggest problem here is really simple though.
an ad, no, please.
My name is Squidward, and
The last 2 episodes have spent too much time focusing on the action of these conflicts. Now, I've got no problem with action. In fact, it makes sense that the show would put an emphasis on this with all these aliens to use. But I'd rather trim down some of these scenes and have more time to explore the characters. That way, the action wouldn't just be cool, it would be emotionally engaging because I would be invested in the conflict between Ben and...
You know what? I would have to disagree because I think, I think episode 2, 3, and 4, it's just mostly about the action. The story isn't really, not really a story.
the villain. And then we have episode 4. Here, Ben goes to visit his Aunt Vera, who he is not interested in seeing. Why? Because our boy Ben seems to really hate old people. Other than Grandpa, I guess. Like, this boy can't stop himself from bad-mouthing the elderly.
This summer was supposed to be about FUN, not hanging out in some old lady's place. Their idea of excitement in this place is probably watching the grass grow. Ugh, why do old people's houses always smell like somebody's cooking socks or something? Coffee? As a candy? Is this some kind of joke? It's Attack of the Old People. I gotta get out of here.
Ben, you snuck out. Aunt Vera was hurt.
Ah, she's old, she'll forget.
Now, I know that being a brat is part of Ben's character, but magnifying it like this, having him be such a jerk to someone for seemingly no
I think it's
reason,
funny.
it is a
I
very
think it's
bad
funny.
look, and it made me really hate this little guy. Before, he was a bit annoying sometimes, but now
Dang
I'm
it.
wondering what on
Old people's
earth
houses
his
be
issue
smelling
is.
kind of weird,
But
bro.
you know what?
Especially cat
The show
people.
at least has to have
Ooh.
an arc for him. Of course it will. Big Ben is going to come out of this a better boy, right? Right? No, not at all. See, instead of Ben eventually acknowledging his mistakes, he gets involved in this big plot where aliens are mimicking the elderly and going to eat them. So he spends pretty much no time with Aunt Vera, rescues the old folks, and then he's leaving and Vera says,
I hope you weren't bored to tears.
to which Ben replies,
It turned out better than I thought.
on its own, this sounds like he might have learned something, but don't let the show fool you. He only had fun because something entirely unrelated to Aunt Vera, which in fact got him away from Aunt Vera, happened to happen. I can't tell if this is a way of shoehorning in a moral lesson to fool the audience, or if this is actually supposed to be an arc for Ben, but this is a special kind of stupid. To me, the obvious way to handle this
I would have
is
fun
to have
too
Ben
if I
warm
was
up to
fighting
Vera.
aliens for a
Maybe
day.
she does some cool things. Maybe she was a plumber like Grandpa. I don't know. Just something. Right now, it feels like the writers threw in this old people suck, am I right, kids? Kind of thing because they thought that's...
Just imagine this, right? Just imagine you're on the couch, just sitting there, bored out of your mind, and you have the Omnitrix in your hand. I would sneak out and transform.
how
Dip out
kids
of there,
think.
bro.
Now,
Bye.
I don't know about you, but most kids I know don't dislike old people. I've legitimately never seen this from a kid. I don't know what's going on. Here's what I would have done instead. See,
Yeah,
I
but a lot
remember
of
being
kids
a
don't
kid
like-
and sometimes going to see relatives who I barely knew.
I think there's a lot of skate videos out there with old people taking kids skateboards. Maybe that came from that. I do watch some skate videos every now and then. So
At the
2000s
time, it was
especially.
pretty uncomfortable because I was a bit shy and I didn't know if these people expected me to remember them. So maybe they could have honed in on that feeling. Have Ben complain that he doesn't know Aunt Vera, or just be frustrated that he doesn't know how to connect with her despite trying. That sort of awkwardness from Ben, as opposed to outright disdain for her, would have made it a lot easier for me to connect to him. Fortunately, episode 5 is a lot better.
yes,
This one, the villain from the first episode, Vilgax, is back, and he's sending 3 bounty hunters to collect the Omnitrix from Ben. So now Ben has a set of more serious,
Actually,
focused
2 are.
foes to deal with.
Spoiler
Like many
alert.
of the other episodes, this one starts by establishing Ben's problem. Though he's training with Grandpa to improve his skills, he still isn't thinking things through. In fact, he nearly slices Gwen to bits, and he wrecks the Rust Bucket's fuel line, and then he acts like a half-hearted apology is enough to make up for it. All of this
He has
is a
upgrade.
sign that
Just
Ben
fix
needs
it,
to
bro.
learn to take the Omnitrix more seriously and mature into this role that's been thrust upon him. Things quickly heat up from here as it's revealed that one of these bounty hunters named Tetrax is only
Oh
pretending
man,
to work
Tech
for
Tracks.
Vilgax,
I miss him
his real
so
mission,
much.
ensuring the Omnitrix
Don't know what
is in
happened
good
to him in
hands,
Alien
which
Force.
of course,
Tell you that.
Ben now needs to prove to
I
him.
am.
In the end, he does just that, using gray matter to strategically take down these foes. From here, Ben earns Tetrax's respect, and all is well. It's a basic but fairly convincing arc for Ben, and the first time I felt that the show has done a good job of following through on one of its moral messages for Ben. On top of that, we get a bit more of Ben's positive personality traits with how concerned he is about protecting his family. At the start, he didn't comprehend how the Omnitrix could hurt them, but now he's forced to face the fact that, so long as he has this power, he will need to help protect them. It's nothing crazy, but this is easily the best episode since the premiere. So will episode 6 be able to keep the quality up? Well, it doesn't look promising, because once again, Ben is using the watch
this
for
is-
frivolous means.
You know, I'm sorry. Is this the Sparkville one? Sparkville is a very great episode. Love the buzz shocks and stuff. I love them.
I guess that means we just reset some of Ben's development.
He's a
Now, this is where
kid.
some of you
He's a
heads
kid.
out in the crowd might
They don't
raise
learn.
an eyebrow. What's this fool, you think? He's watching an airing order, not production order. Yeah, this is one of these things where they aired them out of order from how they were produced. I don't know why things do this, but whatever. No matter which of the orders you use, this episode always comes after the 5th one. Whether it's one episode after or a few, my complaint still stands. Plus, I prefer the airing order, and this is my channel, and there's nothing you can do to stop me, baby! Anyway, episode 6. Yeah, here Ben uses the Omnitrix to mess with this giant rubber band ball.
Aw,
which
dude.
rele-
I do not like HBO's episode ordering. Throws me off. I'm like, wait a minute, episode 5. After episode 5, this is the episode that we're supposed to get. Not Kevin and 11.
Releases this alien named Megawatt. By the way, fun fact, the Omnitrix was originally going to be called Megawatt. Sorry, enough getting off track, but I'm probably getting off track because this episode is...
Thank God they changed it. Megawatt.
On a basic
I'm about to
level,
use the
I think the show
megawatt.
was trying to draw a connection between Ben's goofy antics
Ben, use the
and the
megawatt.
Megawatt's so-called pranks. But like with Animo, this connection
I'm
isn't
dialing the
convincing.
megawatt.
Like, yeah, Ben can be a goof, but he's not like this. Either way, though, this episode gets old fast because there's no compelling emotional element to this
Don't
conflict.
fail me now,
It's just Ben
megawatt.
trying to stop these aliens, running around, engaging in fight scenes that, at this point, are starting to feel a bit samey. Plus, Grandpa's attitude is starting to get on my nerves. His whatever way of dealing with Ben's antics isn't helping anyone.
He's
and I
better
expect
than the
him to be a
reboot.
bit more responsible,
Better than the reboot.
especially
If
where
you
the
see my
Omnitrix is
reactions,
concerned. Then there's
Oh,
that
God.
backpedaling for
Can't
Ben's
even park a
character,
car.
which leaves me thinking the writers are fine
teaching his
with Ben
grandkids
remaining as a
bad
brat
stuff in the
for
reboot.
whole series. I mean, I was more or less fine with him starting this way so he could grow. But if this is going to be his baseline personality for the whole show, if this is going to be how we try to get comedy in there, honestly, it's not funny for me.
It's better than
And I want off this
season
ride.
3 Alien
But
Force.
that's where episode 7 comes in. Because episode 7 is the first episode of Ben 10 that I really, really like. This one starts off similar enough to some of the others, with Ben using his watch for selfish purposes. But then things change when he gets them booted from this hotel and Grandpa
yeah, this
is
was a
ticked. For the
Very.
first time, we really see him disciplining Ben. Of course, Ben doesn't take that well and he runs off, which is when he meets Kevin. Like him, Kevin has special powers, and he's also a bit of a troublemaker. Quickly, Kevin encourages Ben to use his abilities for himself, and then this episode becomes hilariously over the top. I mean, when they try to steal a copy of Sumo Slammers, it looks like the whole police force is coming for them, choppers and all. It's awesome, and makes for a really funny action sequence. However, unlike many of the prior action sequences, this one doesn't overstay its welcome. Instead, Ben and Kevin go to the subway, and Kevin reveals his true colors.
A money train loaded with cash comes down this track. So when it crashes into the oncoming passenger train, boom! Instant
You know, what type of kid thinks like
jackpot.
Hundreds of innocent people will be killed.
Hey, no pain, no gain.
Finally, we have a compelling villain.
Meet Grammarly Go, your go-to solution for getting
An
quality work
ad.
done quickly.
First, there's this little friendship he and Ben have where Ben ignores some warning signs that he's a bad influence. Plus, he's alone, which is what Ben thinks he wants at this point. But that lonely existence doesn't seem to be all it's cracked up to be. Second, they go to steal something, but it's relatively benign in the grand scheme of things. Then Kevin decides it's time for this. And just because he wants some money. Sure, he's far off from Ben, but this forces Ben to reassess his opinion of Kevin. to become more heroic and responsible, and to recognize that he was being selfish and foolish, and that his family isn't there to stifle them. They're there to love him and keep him on a proper path. Then there's the simple fact that Kevin's powers are more interesting than any of the prior villains, with how he can store some of the energy from the Omnitrix and transform into aliens too. Still, even though his abilities are in many ways stronger than Ben's, Ben is able to defeat him with the help of his family. But this ending isn't all sunshine and rainbows. For the first time, it feels like a conflict is properly carrying over from one episode to the next, with Ben accepting that he made mistakes and apologizing, but Grandpa telling him,
"My trust is something you'll have to earn back."
All in all, this episode doesn't just manage to have a more convincing arc for Ben with a relatively competent moral lesson. It's also simply a ton of fun. It's got a fast pace, a villain with a more interesting relationship to Ben and a more extreme personality, a bunch of different set pieces, and we get to see Ben at his most responsible and likable yet. Really, I hope the rest of the show can take more cues from this one, because this was great. Fortunately, the next episode actually maintains some of this change for Ben, so that's cool. It looks like we aren't going to make a habit of resetting him. See, up until this point, Ben has been really pumped about this watch. There may have been a moment here or there where he got annoyed with it, but yeah, those didn't really stand out, and there was no doubt that he loved having it. But now, with an increased sense of responsibility, Ben is left making difficult decisions because of the Omnitrix. Because when Grandpa gets hurt in a fight over the watch, Ben can't help but feel somewhat responsible. After all, if it weren't for him, Gwen and Grandpa wouldn't be in danger. So where in the last episode Ben ran away from his family for selfish reasons, now he runs away for selfless reasons. He just can't stand the thought of his family being in danger because of him. Needless to say, this is a massive development for him. I mean, in previous episodes, he's made mistakes mostly based around obvious character flaws or him being a bit of a brat. Now though, well, this might not even be a mistake. Instead, he's isolating himself for a noble reason. However, this is still a flaw for him because he's assuming this is only his decision. As he says to Gwen,
"This is my fight, my weird watch, not yours."
Gwen's response to this?
Yeah, but you're my weird cousin.
So he might want to run from them, but Grandpa and Gwen have a say in it too. I'm starting to kind of like Ben. Maybe this kid is going to turn out all right. And the next episode keeps it up. This time, Ben has to face his fear of clowns when Zombozo steals away his family's life force. So now where Ben previously fled from his loved ones, he's going to need to run headlong into danger and confront his fears in order to protect them. All around, this episode does a really good job of making Zombozo creepy, with freaky directing, odd imagery, frightening consequences, and in particular,
Yeah, this
solid
episode
sound
scared
design.
me.
Like, it's hard to describe, but the sound this laughter-sucking machine makes, it's really neat and somehow fits this idea perfectly. Actually, this isn't the first time the sound design has been great. Everything related to the Omnitrix is impressive and makes it feel very alien and distinct, and in general, the sound design really accentuates the action well. But yeah, in particular, the scene where Ben admits his fears to Grandpa stands out to me. It's a moment of unexpected vulnerability for the
Into the reboot came in and said, you know what? He's afraid of squids. I don't know what type. I don't know who's smoking over there in this. No, what happened? I don't know.
for the
I don't
awful
know what
obstinate
happened.
Ben. And Grandpa's
I'm
response
broken.
only makes this interaction better. Everybody's got their own crazy fear, Ben. When I was a boy, I was afraid of heights. Well, enough was enough, and I climbed to the top of the water tower. Sometimes you've just got to scare the fear out of you. Here, I'm getting a better sense of Ben's closeness with Grandpa, that he would be willing to admit something he finds so embarrassing, and of the motivation Ben can find in his grandpa's advice. Clearly, when it comes down to it, Ben really respects Grandpa, and Grandpa respects him, too. Either way, this episode serves as a wonderful expansion for Ben. Now he's using his powers for reasons I can fully get behind, and becoming a better person because his family needs him. Fortunately, the streak of solid episodes continues with episode 10. This one primarily focuses on Ben and Gwen's relationship, and it's a good thing because 10 episodes into the series, I'm in a serious need of a reason to care about these two as a pair. Right away, we get a moment that might seem small at first, but I think it's
Oh
super
my
telling.
god.
See, the gang is at the
OG
museum, and as the
Hex,
guide
I
is
missed
speaking,
him
Gwen
so
gets
much.
super excited. So she starts rattling off the same information that the guide is already saying. In response, the guide gets passive-aggressive with Gwen, and here, when Ben sees that Gwen might be upset, what does he do? Well, he quietly makes fun of the guide and gets Gwen laughing. Then later, Gwen is upset when Ben is getting all the praise for being a hero even though she helped too.
Oh, step
So
up
Ben
your
gives her one of
game,
the
Gwen.
items he was gifted. A little bit can go a long way, and now I'm finally starting to see that they're growing closer together. Still, Ben's attitude is challenged in this episode when Gwen gains her own abilities from this amulet and becomes a lucky girl. For a bit, they start arguing, with Ben saying that it's the charm doing all the work, and her
I wish
saying
she
it's
kept
the
the
watch.
abilities,
In the end, though,
or like,
when a villain is trying to steal
I
away
wish
this
she
charm,
learned magic
Gwen
in
decides to
season
destroy
1
it, and many others like
instead of
it.
season
So, even though she could have been more powerful,
3, right?
she realizes that
That
they
was
pose too
too
much
late.
potential danger.
Too late.
Basically, her sense of responsibility overrides her desire to be seen as a hero. It made me really appreciate her as a character. Afterward, Ben praises her decision and gives her the affirmation she needs. Again, Ben is changing significantly, and I'm starting to really root for the little guy. Plus, giving Gwen an affinity for magic is great, since that means she can eventually get more involved in the fights. The narrative won't simply leave her behind. All in all, another solid episode that develops these characters and makes me care about them more.
Another ad.
Meanwhile, episode 11 doesn't do as much to build Ben's character, but that doesn't mean
Oh, I
it's the
hate
fun
this
part.
episode so
Here, when Ben
much.
accidentally transforms into Grey Man,
Bro, the Forever Knights are so trash. I'm sorry. You're probably thinking, you know, an Ultimate Alien Force. Shut up. Ultimate Alien Force, yes, they did have a comeback, but then they were taken out and replaced by the Dagon guys.
he can't
So,
transform back to normal.
Big L.
To make matters worse, he's kidnapped by an alien-obsessed man who wants to give him over to this group called the Forever Knights so he can become famous and tell the world about aliens. Now, this one doesn't show us anything we don't already know about these people, but it doesn't need to because it's got plenty of other stuff going for it. For example, I think this is the first time the watch is being used in a creative way to bring out a conflict. What I mean is that when you look at something like the Omnitrix, there are some what-if scenarios that might spring to mind. One of the most obvious ones is, what if Ben got stuck as an alien? So this is the show confirming that it's going to use the watch in various creative ways moving forward. Second, this episode has a great pace, where there's the A-plot with Ben and this alien-obsessed dude.
I watched
and
this
the B-plot
episode
with
so
Grandpa
many
and Gwen.
times I hate it.
It's super basic, but that simple structure keeps both sides of the story interesting.
I don't
because
like
you're never
this.
stuck with one set
It's
of
not because
characters
of
for
gray
2
matter, it's just...
Beyond that, this episode isn't content to spin its
I don't
wheels. Nah, Ben gets kidnapped, then he's taken to the Forever Knights, then it's revealed that the Forever Knights want to dissect him, then this dude saves Ben's life because he never wanted the alien to get hurt, and then they blow up the castle and escape. There are plenty of different locations and set pieces to keep the audience engaged. This is a great example of how sometimes a fast pace and a promising premise is more than enough to keep me engaged. And the next episode keeps up the cool watch gimmicks.
I
So
love
Ben
this
gets a cold,
episode.
it's revealed
Sick.
that his
Yep.
physical condition as a human impacts the
Heat
alien.
Blast is the only
It's another
cool
one of those
one.
obvious what-ifs that's simply entertaining on a conceptual level.
You know, it's so weird. Why
Unfortunately, though,
does Heat
I
Blast
can't
have...
say I enjoy this episode
Why does
on
his
any
powers
level
turn to
beyond that.
ice
The villain has pretty
when he
much
gets
nothing
sick? I
going
want to
on.
know why.
There's no real compelling character-based conflict. There aren't any particular.
Might have to make
exhilarating
a
fight
separate
scenes,
video on
and
doing
it doesn't
research.
have the fast pacing and variety the last episode had. It's not terrible or anything like that, but I just have nothing much to say. Outside of its sickness gimmick, it's a very forgettable episode. Fortunately, the season's
What's his
final
name?
episode-
Clay? Clay is a very... I would say he's a okay villain. Pretty good. Better than Hex Reboots. I would say that. I said Hex Reboots, not the original one. I don't know. Clay's very good. Sad that he didn't come back. I think he was killed off in like the season finale of Forever Night.
has a lot more going on. Because this is the point where the Vilgax conflict comes to a head, with Vilgax making his move down to Earth to get the Omnitrix. On top of that, all of Grandpa's sketchy hints about some alien-related past lead to the reveal of his underground base, and him being a certified cool man when he attacks Vilgax. Additionally, the Watch starts acting up so that Ben is rapidly changing between aliens with only limited control over which one he becomes. Needless to say, this results in some neat fight scenes that are very fitting for a season finale, with Ben morphing and changing between each of these alien forms rapidly over this battle. Sometimes they put him at an advantage, and sometimes they put him at a disadvantage, keeping things fresh throughout and forcing him to use them in creative ways. I do have one main complaint though, and that's that, though I like Vilgax's design, I don't really know anything about him. Like, obviously he's a bad boy, and he's power hungry, but what else? who is Vilgax?
We learn
I
about
don't
that
really
in
know.
Alien
And this
Force,
conflict would have
sort
only
of,
been better if
kind
there was
of.
something more to him. If I knew what sets him apart from
I
other
like the original. I like OG Ben 10 did a very good job with him. I think keeping him mysterious because we know his goals is to get the Armatrix. Man, I just wish Alien Force. Like, you would think Alien Force Vilgax would would have been able to train himself to be strong as way big, but gets clapped by Diamond Head. How does that work?
basic
And he's been stealing
All in
powers
all,
from the
regardless of
beginning.
this issue, though,
I'm just
this is a fun, action-packed
which what I'm saying has nothing nothing to do about this season. What he's talking about. But I'm so nervous to get to season 3 of Alien Force with this guy,
way to
bro.
wrap up this season, with every major character playing a part in fighting Vilgax and protecting the Watch. I'll admit, after disliking 4 out of the first 6 episodes, I was nervous that I'd come out of this really negative, but I've got to say,
He disliked 4 of them, so he didn't like the. Is he saying he didn't like the animal? Wait a minute, did we miss an episode? No, we didn't.
this season improved a lot over its run.
He didn't like. He did not like. I know he didn't like episode 2, 3, 4. There's no way he didn't like. He didn't like the.
Additionally, it showed me that the show,
Bushhawks.
despite its episodic
So,
nature,
Spark
is willing
Town.
to give
He
these
didn't like
characters
that.
proper arcs.
Oh yeah, he was
Basically, Ben 10
complaining.
has managed to tap into some of the promise of its premise, and I'm pumped to see how much they'll be able to pull out of this. There's so much potential here, and I think I've got a pretty good idea of why this show is so well loved and why this was a big part of many people's childhoods. I honestly can't say that I found it great so far, but I could easily see it becoming great if it keeps up the improvements the way it did this season. But we'll get to that next time when I cover
Season 2 is the best Ben 10 season there is. Like, if I had to think about one bad episode from season 2 Ben 10, it's probably the water one with the rich kid and the ranch grandpa of his that go underwater. I think that's probably the only bad episodes. Because the giant tick banger, Secrets is a banger. After it goes from Secrets to the giant tick. Or then we have two episodes of Kevin 11. First episode is him catching Kevin as a thief, stealing his identity, doing bad things with the aliens. Then Gwen 10. Then we get to the Galactic Enforcers, which we learn about there's more to the world than we thought. Seventh one is about Charmcaster, Wildvine. Then we have the rich guys that go underwater or whatever. Get Vengeance, Vengeance is the best Ben 10. Then we get Fusions, and then we get Ghost Freak, our Sascares, which is season 2 is just jam packed. Can't wait for me to react to that. I probably won't say anything bad. He's probably gonna enjoy it. Besides that one episode, the underwater one, but other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed it. You know, have a nice day.